I don't know how it works, but people notice that without me even mentioning that. I want to share with you my experience and my lessons learned from scaling a software, but that was actually a shameless plug. So if you didn't read the agenda, that is by any mean no technical talk. So I want to focus what is sometimes connected with scaling an application, which is developing a team. Obviously, developing a team might have other sources like taking new projects or taking new responsibilities to the team. I know that is the last presentation, so I wouldn't try to make it long. So let's go on. So let's start with a couple of disclaimers. I tend to tell side stories, which I find interesting, but sometimes, as I don't have access to Reflog right now, I get lost. So if you notice that I'm far off the main topic, please wave at me. That will help, and then I could check out to master. What I'm telling is my opinion. I sometimes might be wrong, that's fine. What works for me doesn't need to work for you. And sometimes reason for that is that I have some underlying assumptions that are quite obvious to me. So you can ask about them, because then that might clear up. Another thing is that there is no single bullet, as Hadi said earlier. So if you want to discuss with the things I'm saying, I'm fine. And the last disclaimer is that some of Intel's VP said if you want to convince somebody to anything, you have to do two things: exaggerate and simplify. If you don't exaggerate, people won't pay attention. If you don't simplify, they wouldn't understand. I do that, please take that under the consideration. Most of the examples that I will use are taken from the place that I live. Oh, that was bad. Where I work. Which is LPP. If some of you don't know the shortcut, now probably that's more clear. I won't discuss how many shops we have or what's the trend. I will just give you some background that might make my examples more relevant. So we are a fashion retailer, and as we are a fashion retailer, IT isn't not by any mean the core business of our company, which is probably different to some of you. Another thing is that our company has 18,000 employees. That's summing both brick and mortar stores and offices. When we have offices, that's 1,300 people, and all of the IT departments is 100 employees. And that gives you the scale, what we have to support with how many resources. And last thing, that might not be obvious as well, where is a place for IT in clothing company? So it starts with when you probably approach our company, that's usually in the stores, in the brick and mortar stores. And there are cash registers, point of sales, where we do also some tax regulation processes, which are different for each country. Then all the data comes to some business intelligence, where planners can do things like stock replenishment, when they plan which assortment is buying in what pace and which shop should have a replenishment, or plan price zones for upcoming collection. Another thing is that we have also an e-commerce where you can buy the same stuff that we have in brick and mortar. That's the actually place where from I came in, and on top of that you have a bunch of integrations to make our lives easier and to work on the same data. So I start my presentation from answering does size matter, and I will do that in the 2 dimensions, first of which is recruitment. So if we are recruiting to the small team, I would advise you to focus on skill. And by small team, I mean 5 people. That's because we want those people to be self-reliant. That would give us in the small team, we usually have the ability to assign tasks in a way that those people could work mostly individual. And that's useful when people are self-reliant. Other thing that we are looking for is versatile. If people are versatile, can both do something Linux deployment, and they are not afraid of the command line while they are still coders, that gives us also agility in how we can assign those tasks. And that's fine when you have quite a small team. When you move and grow to the bigger team, I don't know, 15 people, I would suggest that you would focus more on how the new people will fit within the old team. And there are a couple reasons of that. So if the people are better integrated, and the better integrated they are, they will communicate, and the better will cooperate. And once team grows, those problems are not linearly more difficult, but exponentially. And because of that, I don't treat the interviews as one side only. I treat them bidirectionally. And what I mean by that is we spend the same amount of time of introducing our company and ourselves to the candidate as we want to know him. And we, on the interview, we say what the kind of company we are, what kind of teams we have, what kind of projects we have, and what we plan for a half a year or year ahead. And we do that because, and we also kind of try to give some clues about what our culture is. And the reason for that is the fact the employee likes the candidate doesn't guarantee the success. And some peculiar story. So during interviews, we tell candidates that we have flexible working hours. So one candidate didn't get that part of our definition of flexible working hours. That is, we start between 7 and 9, and that's our flexible working hours. So on his first on his first day at job, he kind of acknowledged that's our definition, and he left after 3 hours. So the fact that we like the candidate doesn't guarantee our success. It has to be bidirectional. And if we are growing, the fit between existing team and the new candidate is just more important. And for instance, in corporations, there are tools called behavior-driven interview. And it was invented after some research came up that suggested that if we'll give the candidate the question on the interview, this is hypothetical situation A, what would you do with it? And it turned out that even we'll try to be as honest as possible, we will try to exaggerate things a bit. We know what is kind of expected in what kind of question, and that wouldn't bring the best results. So BDI approached that problem from answering taking another question, which is think and recall the situation that is similar to hypothetical situation A, and tell us how you behave. And that gives us some true story that we can rely on. And there are also techniques that enables asking cross questions to validate the answers of the candidate. What is more important, this framework is pretty structured, so you have things like resolving conflicts and stuff like that. And you have assigned different levels for each one of them. So if you want candidate to have certain amount of particular skill, you can do that using that framework. So that is spotted in some bigger organizations like corporations. So once you recruit the people, you need to induce them and train them. And again, when I was working at a startup, that was 3 people. The realistic average pace of training and hiring new people was 1 person per 3 months. And the reason for that is when you are that small, your time is very costly. And it was that costly that we even have a rule that we had a time window between we could ask each other questions to not interrupt programmers, because we know that if we interrupt programmers, they get mad, and we don't want to do that. And if we are a 3-person company, that's very costly. In LPP, my team grew, took 8 people in 3 months, and again, that wouldn't possible in startup scale. And the whole our department grew from 5 people to 20 in 3 months. And we could afford that because we were bigger. So what we did was we collected all functional and non-functional areas that might be useful for the newcomers, and then each of the team pick some topics that will cover all of the areas that were useful to the newcomers, and prepared some training and presentations. That way we could have some initial trainings for them. We also did we paired each of the newcomers received 1 person that was her or his buddy and reviewer. So that way, the coming to the new organization was easier because you are contacting only with the 1 person, and you could know that person better, and that was one thing less to worry about. In a corporation, it was a whole another story. So the project was validating the firmware solution that worked on server. And this solution was deployed and entered the maintenance phase. So the idea was that the existing team would move on to the new project, and there will be hired entirely new team that would do the maintenance. So it was possible to hire and train 13 people so it was a month of hiring and month of training. So it was done in that pace. And because the original team was actually bigger, it was possible to hypothetically clone the old team to the new team. And because of the scale, there was also the set of trainings, but as the old team was devoted full time for a month for the training, it was much more intense than we could do at LPP. Also, in the course of time, it was some iterative approaches to the getting newcomers. So one of the outcome of that was there was a set of exercises that was useful for the newcomers, and they could be solved individually. So that was the set of exercises that after training everybody was given to solve in his own time. And another outcome was there was a matrix of people versus functionalities, and each functionality had assigned a main person responsible for that functionality and backup ones. So in case of some vacation or illness, all the functionalities are covered. And again, this is possible only at that scale. So size matters at that point. So as we grow the number of employees, we need to also develop the team. And we start with some changes. So one of the simplest framework that I can think of consists of 3 phases. It says there is a phrase of forming, storming, and performing. And those means that storming, there is a phase of changes. So for instance, getting new people to the team. Then is the phase of storming, which is phase of tuning the team, that they will be trained, they get accustomed to the new processes. And there's a phase of performing, when they're actually ready to deliver something valuable. And it comes in circles because changes are all over the place. So we started with changes that way, that, for instance, we wanted to prevent that there will be old people from old team and new people that just came in. So we, for instance, mixed them in rooms that they physically could sat to each other. We also mixed them in tasks that they will co-work with the new and there will be some groups, both new and old comers, working on the same task. And later on, they could work on the projects that will be missed. And this usually isn't the easiest decision, because we want, for instance, the most senior programmers to work on the most important stuff. But it slows down our induction, and we have to do that. So I would prefer to do that way, that we are mixing that from the beginning. And we also have to face the fact that we need to devote part of time to the induction. That might sound obvious, but probably isn't all the time. So we gave ourselves 2 months for the new people, that they have this full 2 months to learn the code, to get to know the tools, processes, and stuff like that. And after that, we start the serious work. And that's probably obvious part. The non-obvious part is that the old team needs to train those people, and we cannot plan as much performance as they had in the past. So if we face that fact, then we can manage that and have the realistic expectations out of that. The next things that change were our development tools. So, for instance, we had a single development server when we had 5 people, and there was a JetBrains IDE that synced files via the SSH. And while people were working on the same file, it obviously got overridden. But when there was 5 people working on that, it was okay-ish. It worked. They developed a lot. But when there was 16 people, all of a sudden it wasn't 3 times worse. It was exponentially worse. So we had to develop whole another environment, which at this moment is every developer has a Vagrant, so there's single Vagrant in repository, which is developed on DigitalOcean Cloud, and then each of developer have individual development environment. And that's the state as today, and we still have to develop that. Also, the amount of maintenance that we have to do on this environment is also bigger than it used to be. So it isn't really linear in prepping our tools. It's probably exponential in many ways. And another tool that we have to also adjust was when we were a 5-people team, mail plus link was okay, because we lived close to each other, so that was fine. But once we grew to the amount of 20, link has its weaknesses. So we switched to Slack, which also enabled us to get some features like every time the build is on some environment, then there is information on certain Slack channel. And when there is some new ticket created, then there is also information on Slack channel. And people can also choose which information then they want to have real time. That's also really important. And as that's communication, which is very hard to do, and that's only that doesn't solve all the problems with the communication. So that's only one step towards it. Another thing that changed is motivation. So when I was working in corporation, I had an experienced team, and within this team there were some people that worked kind of long in corpo, and they kind of knew the rules of the game, and they knew how to pretend that they are working, but they are actually they are not working that hard. And we had to spend a lot of our efforts to give them this excitement to work that they could work. When I then received an inexperienced team, I was, wow, this problem went away. But after some time, the new problem arose, which was there was certain kind of people that get bored really fast. So we gave them some new task whenever there was some side task or connected with the main release, and we counted how long the new toys lasted for them. If they got bored another time because they just because they are young and they want to just have another framework and stuff like that, we have to work with that. In LPP, as the team grow kind of fast, we wanted team to be motivated to share knowledge. So one of the things that we induced was brown box sessions. So we didn't want to invent the wheel. So brown box sessions, for short, are some informal meetings during the lunch, and the name is from the US when the sandwiches that are made home are actually packed usually in brown bags. So people get their lunches, and while they eat, one of the team members presents, new framework that he got to know, some cool code that he made recently, or he was at the conference and he liked the talk and he referred that. And that way we are encouraging the team to share the knowledge between each other, because as the team grows, the knowledge sharing is just harder, because we don't have these people in one room. They're dispersed, they're working on different parts of code, and it's just getting harder. And another thing that I like to introduce is a pencil metaphor that was given to me by my mentor. He once said that Polish engineers have a problem of a pencil. Once it's broke, they complain that that pencil is broken, instead for looking at a sharpener. So I do this pencil metaphor as a joke, but it's actually something deeper. So when people start to complain, yeah, that's external dependency, or that's the business decision made by this business and I can't do anything about it, I try to disagree. So there is a book by Stephen Covey called 7 Habits of Effective People. Well, when he introduces the definition of the area of influence, and he says that if we try continually to change some things, our area of influence will increase. And as abstract as it sounds, you have to try it to see whenever it really works. Because once you try to change some things that are probably some external dependency or somebody else's decision, once you try it more and more, you are more efficient in that. So another thing that changes while we grew the team is responsibility. And that's also tricky because it's really easier to manage the team of 5 than team of 15. And my favorite example of that is we are, when counting by employees, mostly waterfall organization. So in our department, we are doing the transition towards Scrum. And my favorite advantage of the Scrum is when we have waterfall, there is some project definition, there are some high-level designs. Those high-level designs contain some requirements. The requirements are t-shirt estimated, and there is some plan done. And then after some while, this plan is given to the engineers, and engineers have a plan that this feature more or less have to be finished by done and stuff like that. And when engineers receive something like that, they don't feel it because that was given. There was somebody else thinking about it. Maybe he coded like 10 years ago and we'll just move on. And in Scrum, we have estimating only the part that is nearer, so we narrow the error. What is more important the people who are estimating, they're actually doing the stuff. So there is this commitment, and commitment is awesome, because engineers, once they estimate something and they have it the committed to the business, then they treat it like an own child, and that's very good. And when it comes to responsibility, that commits very, very good. Another thing that changed is organization and organization culture. So in terms of organization, once we added people, we had the daily meetings got longer and longer. So we dealt with that in several ways. So one of the reasons we basically splitted the dailies per project or per scope. And it's easy to split the daily into several circles, but we have to keep in mind that once we do that, we have to keep them synchronized. So we have to do some representatives from other dailies to join another dailies, because we don't want to have a situation whereas two people are solving the same problem and in the parallel, and the only reason behind that is that they don't know that they work at the same time on the same problem. So daily division is fine, but we have to remember about syncing them. Another thing that our Scrum team, one of the Scrum teams did, was they did daily Scrums in 2 rounds. So first round was the usual Scrum one. So what I did yesterday, what I'm doing tomorrow, and what are the obstacles towards the Scrum, the purpose of the sprint. And the second round was opt-in. So if somebody had some more to talk about or to ask some questions, people could sit down and stand up if they were interested in that. And that worked pretty well for them. Another reason why our dailies were getting longer was we are kind of fun organization, so we gossip a lot. So we induced this deal that we do gossip Fridays, and we gossip only on Fridays. So usual daily lasts for 15-20 minutes, and if we have a lot on our heads, the Friday could go as long as hour, and that was easier to do that way. So what you see at the picture is actually the Friday one. So we laughed that hard that actually Łukasz have had the muscle spawn in his stomach. So team helped him by giving some magnesium to him to help the spawn. Another thing that also defines our culture is somebody lost a mug, which we're probably emotional connected with, and somebody made a joke out of it. So he write a ransom that if you want to receive your mug, you have to give me that amount of money in that kind of currency, and the bills have to be unsigned. And if you don't fulfill my ransom, there is also threat that, and there is a broken glass. So we as an organization like to joke a lot. What is also kind of different about LPP, we didn't have our mission and values until last year, and we functioned. So the way it worked was we had this feeling of how the people around were, and we actually knew with whom we want to work with and who will be a good fit to our organization. So we, by most of it, those values were there. They wasn't named, and we still could function with that. And another part of what defines our culture is that we do things in fashion. And fashion is specific because our marketing departments want to change and try a lot of stuff. And that could be really tiring. But by most of time it's fun because there is a lot of things changing around. And fashion is fun. So I don't know how it works, but when any developer spots a bug, it's always reported in lingerie department. I don't know how it works, but they always try to find bugs in that department. Another thing that makes our work a little bit fun is that we have a competition. So what you can see in the picture was the launch of the H&M store in Poland. So once it got launched, we all charged to that site and tried to look for bugs, what things they do better, what things they do worse, and what can we inspire from. And we obviously wanted to troll them a little bit, so we throw them a nice invitation to Poland, but they didn't reply. And last thing that I want to address is leadership. And let's start analyzing leadership with saying that there are many leadership styles, and there is no single one that rules them all. And again, one of the simplest division of leadership styles is autocratic. The last part is delegational, and the middle one was participative. So authoritative is, in a way, when you have I don't know, factory or some tasks that are all over the same. Then the authoritative leadership means that the leader says you do that in that manner. In participative leadership, the leader participates in the work of the team, and he does some things and the team does some others. And in delegative, the leader delegates the task to the certain people. And for instance, in my case, I like the delegative approach, but it doesn't mean that's the best style, that the style that fits my characteristics. And also the style works only in some situations. So if leader is aware of that fact, and it's also useful that the team is also aware of this preferred style, it makes our lives easier. So to do that, I use two tools. First one is Strength Development Inventory. And what SDI is it says that it pictures the values of person as anchor, and my microphone would suit for an anchor for some time. And behavior of a person is my right hand. And the anchor is connected with my right hand, and it floats on the water. And SDI says that we are looking at the situation from the top. So we only see the behavior. And it says that looking at the behavior, it could change, and values are in the same place. So what SDI tries to achieve is assessing values which will be more accurate in defining the what motivates people, because that's what SDI is about. So it categorizes people in 4 categories: the task-oriented, data-oriented, people-oriented, and hubs. And given that, it's easier for me, as I'm in some place, it's easier to think for me, for the other people that are motivated by different things than me. I could try to adjust and also try to do things differently for a specific kind of people. And another framework that I use is situational leadership. And what it says is there is development level. What development level is concerned with the task. So for instance, I can drive a car, but me driving to the work daily is totally different task for me racing a racing car on a racing ring. So those are two very different tasks. And for each person and for each task, it defines development level that consists of commitment and competence. So it says that if some guy starts a new task, his commitment is high because he is new to the task, and you don't need to motivate him. And on the other hand, his competence level against this task is pretty low, so you have to be pretty direct about how to help him, that he wouldn't feel lost. Then he develops a little bit, and he knows how much he didn't know in the beginning, and so his commitment falls short. So we have to help him and motivate him to get him happy again about it. And at the same time, he is not competent enough to work. So we still giving him such clues how she or he have to approach things. Then once he develops further, he approaches some sinusoids. So he does things. He tries them. Once they are fine, once there is failure. So we know that he have a enough competence to do that on his own. So we don't want to underlie this competence. So we are trying to boost his confidence when he is facing failures. And the last stage is when the competence and confidence is high. So we don't want, he's then an expert and he is self-reliant. So this model is suitable for the situation where leader did the task of the employees. So in our environment, it isn't that useful because how all of things changes in our environment, but it gives us this approach that we need to treat people differently at the different development levels of them, and that is always good to keep in mind. And the last area of leadership is feedback loop, which is getting more important as we grow. So when I was in corporation, there was this tool called manager feedback tool, and there were some categories about how to rate a manager, your manager, and they were numerical. So the result of this was some numbers. So, and that was done regularly. So then I received the numbers, and I have to imagine what was bad because I went from 0.58 to 0.53. That was useless. So one of the managers invented another thing, which was leaving the team in the one room. You could do that per project, per team, giving them blank sheet of paper and write as a whole group 3 things that manager does good and should be sustained, and 3 things that are done poorly and should be changed. And that way, first of all, you have a data that is in plain English. Second, you have some really useful data because you know which part of your leadership is well prized by the people, and which should be changed. And there are also clues where the whole team should be going. And so we do that regularly, and I find it very useful. So that's it. I'm glad that you didn't fall asleep, at least most of you. So if there are any questions, I'm glad to answer them. You don't have to be afraid.
So I have a question. It looks like you invest a lot in people. So does the investment return itself?
So the guy asked that all what I am talking requires a lot of time and investment, and the question was, does it pay off? So there is this kind of famous phrase that CEO asked the financial guy. So those trainings are that expensive. So what if we train the people and they will leave? And the CEO replies, what if we don't train them and they stay? So you can have you can always complain that it's hard because it's costly to train people, but if we want to have good integrated team, it just has to be done. So at the scale when I was in the team of 5, the idea was that I would code in 50% of time and manage the team in other 50. So that was geo-dispersed project, and it was pretty complicated. And at the end of the day, if you wanted to develop that team good, I was kind of devoted to managerial stuff for the 100% of the time. So I think that it pays off. I hope that answers your question. So the question was that it's really nice story from the book that you have time to induce people and train them and then do stuff. So we actually had this situation that the new guy had to just jump in and code because that was required. So practice is practice, life is life. So in such situations, I remember about the situational leadership. So if somebody is starting with a lot of tasks, we meet with them just more often that we would do in the beginning. We tell him that this isn't because we want to be bossy. We want just to help him in develop all the skills. So only piece of advice that I could give you is just to observe that people more often, and also instruct the other members of the team that he needs to have a special attention, that they wouldn't be frustrated. So I would do one-on-ones more frequently and stuff like that. That's okay. Go ahead.
So, what about conflicts? Do you have conflicts in teams, and how you resolve such issues?
That's the question was about the conflicts in the team. So that's the hard one because that's a very generic one.
So let's focus on competences, for example.
Okay.
You have two guys in one team, and they want to do things different.
So when it comes to, so the question was about the competence between two people in the same team. So when it comes to technical stuff, I have, and that's my way of doing things, I don't do technical stuff. So I code after work to not get rusty and to communicate with my people, but I don't want to micromanage at all. So when it comes to competence level, I could mediate between them, but I won't do any technical decision. So my simplest piece of advice would be find somebody, some architect that could be probably from other department that he wouldn't, I don't know, like the one person over another, to have some the most outside voice and try to mediate them and help that only on mediate level. And also what helps in conflicts is, and I remember the Polish name, that's FUO, which is fakty, uwarunkowania, oczekiwania. So that's our facts. Oh, it's too late, so I wouldn't try to translate it. So it helps to structure because when we are stating that there is a problem, we don't want to make it personal. So FUO helps in a way that we start with the facts. So at Friday afternoon, I see that you had some conflict. I saw that you had some conflict between A and B. Then you jump to the second part. I felt bad because I don't possess that as a teamwork. And what I expect you to do is to get this architect from that department that he would help to resolve that struggle, technical struggle, in a peaceful manner. And So that was generic question, and I hope that I just help a bit.
And what about personal issues? So let's assume that there are two guys that don't like each other, or because of the bad decision. The bad decision was made, and the other one sabotages the project, or something like this.
So that also kind of underlines the importance of getting similar people. That also causes that they will cooperate better, but that also doesn't guarantee us. So there are multiple ways to do that. You can split them if you see that they won't cooperate further, and sometimes if somebody is toxic, you have to just let them go, because we don't want to have toxic people around us that they will spread these bad feelings across the people. So sometimes it requires the bad, sad decisions to be made. I don't know if that answers a little bit. Anything more? So thank you very much.